Imagine, son.
So welcome to Creator Chat. My name is Ryan, and today I have Omar Spahi. We're here to talk about his new book that he's co-writing with Sina Grace, Getting It Together. Welcome, Omar. How's it going?
Good. Thank you so much for having me on the show. Super excited to be here and talk Getting It Together.
Yeah, dude, me too. So for those that may not be as familiar with you and your work, I was wondering if you could just share a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, I'm an animation writer, comic book writer. I love just creating stuff and I'm working with really, really talented people. So I've been doing this since, I want to say 2008, 2009, and been writing comics for about 12 years.
Nice, dude. And how did you, like as a kid, not professional, but how did you first get into comics?
Well, as a kid, what happened for me was I was at a Barnes & Noble, which shows you that I'm old as can be, but there was a spinner rack there, and I started picking up a couple issues. I picked up The Flash. I think it was an old Batman issue, and the person at the cash register was like, "You have to buy these." And my mom was like, "No, I'm not going to buy them." But he's like, "He wants to read. Let him read." And that was the only way I got my comics was off the spinner rack as a kid. And as like I'm waiting for the next issue, 30 days for a kid is a really long time.
Yeah.
So I like felt like forever. But I got the next issue, and after that I was hooked. And once I found out there were whole stores dedicated, then you could go back and buy back issues. I was just hooked into the habit like none other.
Yeah, you say Barnes and Noble. I was getting them at Walden Books too, so that's how old I am. Yeah, that's funny that you say Flash. Flash was actually my first comic book.
Nice. And what was your favorite issue, or what was your issue that you remember? Which one?
Flash 82 by Mark Waid.
Oh, nice.
It was like a part 2 of 3 or something of like Nightwing had come in there when he was wearing that, that ugly like yellow hat on his
I remember.
Yeah.
That was that was one of the Time issues, right? Was that one of the Time issues? Is that because it was
No, that was before.
That was right before. Okay, because I was like, there's the secret of Barry Allen. No, that was when Barry Allen returns is in the 70s for Mark Waid's run, right?
79 was the conclusion, and then I think 80 was when Magenta. Actually,
Oh yeah.
When Magenta came in, and she was like that was when Linda and Wally kind of were still new and stuff, and then I think right at the end of this arc that led into I forgot the arc that was in between. I think it was a couple like one-offs, and then it was Terminal Velocity, and then or Bart Allen had come in right before that.
Because I know Terminal Velocity ended with 100, right? Like that was Savitar
Yes.
and everything. Cause
yeah,
I remember that. That was...
I know. I'm a huge Wally West is my favorite character. So huge.
What do you think now that there was 2 Wally Wests, with like the old school Wally West being brought back and the new school Wally West? Like I'm curious what your thoughts are.
I didn't like what they did. I think they kind of, and I think it was kind of DC in general. They kind of, it just felt like they kind of shit all over the character a little bit. I do like Wallace West, as a separate character. I don't like that they were kind of insinuating that he was like the new Wally or a different Wally. I thought that was kind of a disservice to the character. Wally's my Flash. Barry Allen, to me, like he served his purpose. You know what I mean? Like I kind of don't think they should have brought him back. I don't mind Barry. Like I like Barry, how he's being. Williamson did a fantastic job during his run. I do like that post what they did with Heroes in Crisis, post what they did with this that horrible Flash Forward miniseries that I did not like. Williamson kind of gave him this past week a nice little capstone for Wally, kind of elevating him back to where I think he should be. Because I think there was so much work done with the character that what they ended up doing and kind of throwing that away kind of was upsetting as a fan,
Absolutely.
But yeah, let's get back to you. So what inspired you to make that leap from fan to creative?
Well, it was funny, I was sitting at a comic book shop, or I was sitting at a restaurant. There's this place called, it was The Counter over in LA. And I was talking to somebody, and he was talking to me about creative teams and how like this person's on the book and now it's different. And it was the first time to me that it registered that like people make these and I can go and make that. So that night we were talking and I went home and wrote a script. And after that point, I was just hooked. And I was like, oh, wow, I just love the process. I love like figuring out the characters. I love like figuring out, I'd been a writer all throughout high school and college. And so I was like, oh, how do I do this in comic book form? And so like, I really had a lot of fun with the whole process. So it's been an absolute dream to just make comic books. It never feels like work for me. So it's absolutely great.
But I discovered you through your podcast. That's how I first came across your name. So I was wondering if, before we get into the book, I just want to ask if you could talk a little bit about why you started the podcast, and yeah, just give us a brief rundown of the podcast.
So the podcast was something that just kind of came about because I had a friend of mine who had a book coming out, and I wanted to do some press for it. And I was like, hey, this is just something fun. I get to hang out with my friend and just talk his book. And he had a book called Get Naked coming out. So Steve Siegel was there and he was like, hey, cool, I'm coming over and I'm bringing Joe Kelly with me and we're just going to hang out and do some quick interviews. And then from there, it just kind of like snowballed. And, 3 years later, here we are and we've blown up and it's been crazy. Like it's been quite a journey, from going from just like, hey, just sitting in front of a mic and doing some stuff to building an audience after several years. It's been insane.
Yeah, it's cool to kind of ask you too, because like I started with I started with just a site. I was writing. I would do written interviews. I would transcribe everything myself and stuff. And it's cool to see how you blew up and kind of like where I'm trying. It's kind of what I'm trying to do as well. Like I try to cover as many bases as I can and have a wide range of like who I talk to, type of books I'm talking about. I really love being able to talk to indie creators. And like I said, we're here to talk about getting it together. I've already talked to Sina. I've read the first 2 issues. I really enjoyed them. So I want to get your take on the book and how that book came about.
It's awesome. It's available at Collector's Paradise for the Signature Series. So if you're a fan of Sina or myself, it's available there, and you guys can pick up all 4 issues signed, even with the pandemic and everything. But for me personally, it's a real. I grew up reading Sina's work with Self Obsessed, Not My Bag, Little Depressed Boy, and for me, it's just that stuff really hit me in the heart. And I thought that was just really powerful storytelling. So I was immediately attracted to Sina's work. Sina and I went to high school together, and I was like, hey, this would be a really fun concept to take this and flip it on its head. And so I took what I loved and I took what Sina loved and kind of, rolled it all in together. And Sina's just an amazing talent. So getting to work with him has just been so much fun.
That's crazy. So you guys have been friends since high school?
No, like you said, I was like, we talked earlier about The Flash. I walked into the comic book store as a kid and I was like, hey, do you like The Flash? And he's like, no, I read everything else. And I'm like the one kid who reads only The Flash. And so in high school, we never really hit it off. But it wasn't until later that we were both in the comic book industry and they were like, hey, we do this. And we just were both like, cool, let's do some cool stuff together. And I think we both are the same in terms of like geographical background, but totally different when it comes to worldview and perspective. We have a lot of similarities and a lot of differences as well.
And then how did you guys come up with this concept? Was it something that you cultivated together? Did you bring it to him? Was vice versa?
We were sitting in a coffee shop and I was like, I want to do something that like has been inspired by his previous works, but something that's a little bit more, I brought it to him at a coffee shop and I was like, hey, like, let's do this take, because I knew the type of stuff that he does and I knew the stuff that I wanted to do and I wanted to tell my own version of that. So it kind of just came through conversation. So like it started with a couple like, hey, let's do this. And we just started riffing and going back and forth. And lo and behold, Sina was like, I don't want to draw the book. So he brought in the awesome Jenny Define and she knocked it out of the park. She was like so killer.
He said, or it's been said in like interview, or I don't know if it's interviews. It's been said that it's kind of like a modern day take on Friends.
Yeah.
And the relationships.
It definitely is that. We wanted it to be more millennial. We wanted it to be more real. I think that's one of the things that made Friends so fun is that like that sense of dating in your 20s and like what's happening and what sort of weird stuff are people doing and like what's okay and what's not okay. Like and just taking a hard look at ourselves as a culture and being like, oh, cool, this is what's going on now. This is the stuff that people are doing and are trying to get away with and are think it's okay and it's not, and this is stuff that's not okay, but it's kind of okay, So like,
Yeah. I really love and I think what's really cool too is that the cast is very diverse in both personalities, backgrounds, and stuff like that. Was that part of one of your goals? Like I asked Sina this too, but I want to know from your perspective. Was that one of the goals that you wanted, was to make sure that the cast felt diverse and didn't just feel like cookie cutter? Because I mean,
well,
Friends, it was an all white cast, you know what I mean?
well, it
So
wasn't. I don't think it was done like, from my perspective. I don't think it was done automatically. I'm like, oh, these are just who these people are. Cena's a huge fan of indie rock bands and smaller bands, and he has his ear to the floor, literally. He goes to a lot of really small shows, and he brought in the whole band aspect of the show, and so, or the book. So he was the one who really built out the that aspect of the band and building out the cast. For me, it started with Sam and Jack, and can a relationship survive past when you break up with somebody? Can you stay friends with your former friends if they were like related to your ex? So I think it's
yeah.
that question there is something that lingers for me.
And how do you divide up the writing responsibilities?
I mean, I wish I could tell you it's every issue is different. Some issues I literally take the first stab at it, and Cena comes in and does a pass, and I'll come and do a polish. And sometimes, it'll be vice versa. He'll, we literally work really well together, and it never, for me, ever feels like work. So I just get to have fun hanging with my friend, being like, no, this doesn't work. This still got to fit with the theme. This got to fit here. This is where we said we're going to end the issue. So we talk things out first, usually, and then we're like, cool, we know where this is going to end and we know what it's going to be. And it's just been a really fun process.
And is there certain characters that like you kind of like, I'm writing that character?
Yes and no. I think there's characters that I gravitate towards, and like sometimes it's just fun. But I wouldn't say like there's like a character that I write more or better than Cena. I think it's like a very collaborative process, and we go back and forth, and we're like, oh, okay, this is what this character would say. I think if you would ask Cena that question, I feel like Jack has a lot of Cena adventures in him. So.
And I know it's 4 issues, but are there ideas and plans to move it forward if the sales allow it?
Yes, Cena and I have already been talking about what we would do with a second arc, and we've already been going back and forth with some fun stuff. So it's all very exciting. It's all happening. So we've already talked about it. We know where the next arc will go, and what we're going to explore with the characters moving forward. So we're very excited about it.
Awesome. And you mentioned the signature series at Collector's Paradise. I've been shopping there for years. I've been working there for the past year. I was wondering if you could just talk a little bit about how that came about. I mean, personally, I think it's awesome because, like, look, there's no cons. There's no signings at stores. Collector's Paradise is known for having a lot of signings. And did Ed bring this to you? Was this an idea that you kind of, like, approached him about?
I think Ed came to us and was just like, hey, listen, with the pandemic and everything going on, I've been friends with Ed online for a while. And I was like, hey, listen, I was like, absolutely, anything that's for the fans, I'm going to be about it, and definitely helping out Collector's Paradise any way I can, I'm about it. So if it just seems like a win-win for everybody involved. The fans get an awesome book that's signed that they normally couldn't get. And, Cena and I love to work with the fans and be there for them. Awesome. So we're really excited for the signature series to be out at Collector Paradise.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, Ed's always got these ideas that he comes up with, and I think that, like he did a signature series, and during the pandemic he did the graphic novel club, which I thought was also really cool. And I think it's awesome that you, Cena, and some of these other creators are down to do this, because I know that it also, you're taking time out of your day to go sign a shit ton of books too. So thank you for doing stuff like that. I think it's awesome.
No, I mean, that's what it's about. It's really not about me. It's really about the people who go pick up the book, and hopefully they enjoy it and they get something that's, hopefully we're able to go and turn this into something that's really valuable for them and a very unique experience where they can go and build off this and take the book, and hopefully it's affected them like, we've been affected by comic books with the Flash and Sina's books and so much more, that inspires them to go and make their own thing and inspires them in their life to be better.
Is there anything else that you got in the works?
Oh man, I have so much in the works. For me personally, I with the podcast and comic books, my next step for me is animation. I am a huge fan of animation, and I think that's the way I want my future to be. Is I'm really passionate about it, and talk about comic books never feel like work. Animation literally never feels like work. I just have fun. Growing up, I was a huge fan of like every animated show, from Batman the Animated Show, X-Men, Spider-Man, Dragon Ball Z, you name it. Dexter's Laboratory, Johnny Bravo, like everything. And that stuff is like, oh, this is so much fun to watch, and it's so much fun to make. It's really exciting to look forward and be like, oh, cool. How do we take the stuff that we grew up on with comic books and the stuff that's inspired us and take it to that next level in animation?
And, I was wondering if you could share too, is there any advice that you would share or you could share with somebody that's maybe trying to navigate a way to get into the industry? Because everybody gets in different ways. I mean, you could say like, even starting a podcast is a way to kind of make those connections, or schooling. I mean, there's so many different avenues. I was wondering if you could share some advice. Anybody listening?
I went through this with a friend of mine yesterday, actually, and it's there's a very long, convoluted answer here, and it's be nice, be personable, and introduce yourself to as many people as possible in whatever way you can. Don't go on Facebook and hit up a bunch of editors asking for work, because that's not it's not going to work. If you go and you just start conversations and understand that people are human, and you start with people who are on your level, people who are above your level, people, the Jim Lees and the, Dan Didio's are not going to always be the most accessible people. But if you start talking to other people in the industry, all of a sudden you build a crew, you build a group of friends, and you guys come up together. And then you have other people who just know people along the way. You start to know everyone, and it's really about people, connecting with them. And I can't tell you how many times I've just wanted to be friends with somebody, and it's turned into more. Just taking something that's like that idea of, hey, let's just hang out and talk and see, and all of a sudden you start working together. That's just the process of how things go. Mm-hmm. So I would really recommend go out of your way, be super friendly. I know it's uncomfortable for a lot of people to go and talk to strangers, but come talk to me. I'm very friendly. You'll know somebody in the comic book industry if you don't know anyone before, and it's great. The podcast for me, I've introduced myself to so many people I would have never felt comfortable talking to. And for me, it's helped grow my career insane in a very short amount of time. So I'm super grateful for everyone who's come on my show and been super kind to me. And anyway, to get ahead and just keep making stuff that I love to do.
Same, dude. I think it's funny that you say that, because like, I mean, if I just go back and I listen to not even like the video interviews that I did, but if I go back and listen to the first like phone interview, you can hear the nervousness in my voice, because I'm like, dude, I'm talking like, when I was talking to Brian Michael Bendis, I'm like, dude, I'm talking to Bendis right now. Like, so like you can hear like at moments where I pause, because like, and I remember like feeling nervous, and then I go to now and like I just feel like it's so easy, because like you said, they're just people. Like you're a regular person. You just happen to make comics. You just happen to be an editor, or you just happen to be in animation, whatever, right? And we're all just people at the end of the day, and we're just having a conversation. It doesn't have to be like, oh my God, like nervousness,
I feel the same way, and I was talking to Bendis recently, and Bendis was just like this amazing teddy bear, super nice guy. He went super out of his way to shout out Getting It Together, and it meant the world to both Sina and I, and we were both like, this is so awesome. And you cannot get a nicer guy than Bendis, and he has been so kind and such a good person on top of it. So you just, it's so rare. I'm so glad for his success, and he's got so much higher to go. So he is a huge role model for me. So I totally understand the nervousness in the voice, but he is just the nicest guy you can imagine.
Yeah, he really is. I mean, and you know what? I haven't found one creator that hasn't been nice. maybe in person at a con. You know what I mean? But like when you go to a con, like people are tired. They talk to so many people, and everybody has a bad day. But anybody that I've interviewed has always been super nice, super personable, and that's why still 3 years later I still continue to do it because it's just for me it's just fun to get to like pick your guys' brains, you know. Uh, I do want to ask what books or creators are you currently into?
Oh man, I'm
Just a
super
couple.
biased. I have so much I'm reading at this time. So right now I'm going through, one of my mentors is Steve Siegel, a good friend of mine, and so I'm going through his entire catalog and reading literally everything he's ever written, which is a
Mhm.
lot. So right now I'm on the Crusades, the part two of the Crusades. He's done Genius, Get Naked, uh, It's a Bird. I just reread that recently. Um, I have literally a stack right here that I can say Sandman Mystery Theater, uh, and I'm reading Lock and Key, Aubrey Sitterson's No One Left to Fight. Um, I'm literally picking up different comic books at different times and going through them. I used to grow up reading Marvel and DC, but I think you stay in the industry when you get older and you look for the new creators, you look for the fun ideas, and you see what's well executed and what's not. And
Mhm.
it's a lot of fun. What
Yeah,
about you? What are you reading right now?
oh man, dude, I read absolutely anything I can kind of get my hands on. I'm like you. I try to like look at some of the newer stuff. I just read A Map to the Sun by Sloan Leon. Sloan Leong, I think is how you say her name. It's from First Second. I've definitely started checking out some of the YA stuff that I didn't that's coming up because like Gene Yang, he just did Dragon Hoops. I love that. Adrian Tomene's um, The Loneliest Cartoonist. I feel like it's a longer name, but you know I read that. I've Love and Rockets has been something that I got into in the past couple of years. I've read all of that. Uh,
That's a lot because Love and Rockets is a lot.
yeah, it's I picked my brother got me the first volume for my birthday, and I'm like okay, I got to get
I'm
all
in.
you know. I love Jaime. Jaime's work is Maggie and Hopi are what I've gravitated towards, but Gilbert's stuff is amazing as well. Hickman's X-Men is
Yeah.
phenomenal. Some of the mainstream Zdarsky's Daredevil, Al Ewing's Immortal Hulk. Not everything is great from the big two, but there are some real gems in there. But mostly, image stuff. A ton. Boom is killing it too. Um,
Boom is absolutely killing it. I've been loving
it's
Seven
insane.
Secrets and
Yes,
Once in the Future has been fantastic. Like everything they're putting out has been just aces all the way. So it's
I
been
know. It's
awesome.
like they can't. It's like they haven't not had a hit every book.
I
You have Keanu with Berserker that they're.
know.
How could you
That's
not?
amazing.
Yeah, how could you not want to read that? I mean, who doesn't love Keanu Reeves?
Exactly.
So yeah, there's
Exactly.
a lot of awesome stuff.
Power Rangers, Mega Man, and then their original stuff to me is even better. And so I am super super excited for everything they're putting out.
Yeah. As a fan, I haven't created. Like I would like to one day be in the industry in some fashion, even if it's not writing, because I can't draw for shit. But writing maybe. But I kind of like am fascinated with like the more behind the scenes, more of the editing and stuff. Like I think that would be kind of cool to get into. And I've seen from like when I was a kid, going back to those Wizard magazine days and watching the 90s and how the collapse of the market, I think we're seeing a huge change once again in the industry. But I was wondering, just in your time in the industry, what do you think we need to see in order for it to thrive and survive, especially in this time of like, uncertainty because of the pandemic and all the other stuff going on in the world. And we're seeing like more of the digital kind of be an influx and focus, especially with like DC. I was wondering, in your opinion, what do we need to see?
So I actually have a really I'll tell you it's a little bit of a long-winded answer, so I'll tell you the full story. For me, I grew up picking up my books on spinner racks at the local Barnes and Noble. So I had the mindset when I was younger that I want to bring that back. And I said, I want to go and bring back, picking up single issues at the grocery store and all this stuff. And then it dawned on me, that's an old way of thinking. I want to go backwards. That's the wrong mentality. Clearly, why am I going to go back to something? If it was working, it would still be working. Why are we going to go back? And comic books are no longer that 25-cent item that you throw on at the end of It's a $5 book for just one issue. So going backwards, I think, is not the issue. I think the way to do it, and I thought about this extensively, is similar to what Boom's doing. I think every single book should have a Kickstarter, and as well as go through the local shops. I've talked to a lot of people, and a lot of people who have done Kickstarters say the people that go buy their stuff in stores aren't the ones who are doing the Kickstarter. So offering some sort of prestige ultra edition, like Berserker is doing, is absolutely fantastic. So with Berserker, you can get like the complete volumes directly there, but you can still go and get the single issues through the comic book store. And to
Right.
me, I think there's a formula there where the comic book stores definitely keep the Wednesday Warriors in there. The collectability aspect is definitely more in the comic book stores. You still don't lose that, and you can go pick up the book there. But for the people who are interested in getting the complete thing once it's done and they don't mind waiting, I think Kickstarters is a new way to get people into comic books, and I think that's the future. I really think getting people who have never read comics before to just check out a couple books. It's like I've had people who are not into comic books at all read my stuff, and it means the
Mhm.
world to me because they're fans of me as a person. And to see that, I'm like, oh, this is how people get into comic books. People start with one person, and then they go, oh, cool, my friend makes comics. I'm going to go read this other comic book. Ryan's making a comic book. Let's check it out. Ryan's editing this. Let's go see what it is. And from there, I think it becomes, you build up the comic book industry a little bit more instead of going back to an old way of thinking of like, hey, let's bring back this old direct market, or let's only focus on the shops. I think there's a way to do it where you grow the online presence without making it all digital, but you grow it in that way. So that's my belief. I've spent a lot of time thinking about it, as you can tell, and I'm
Yeah.
really passionate that I think that's the future.
Yeah, I definitely think Kickstarter is one of the main things. But you say like it's going back, but I don't necessarily think that it would be bad to see it in markets either. I know that you could look at that as going back, but like not. I mean, not all kids. Like I'm talking about young kids, not just like older readers. Like a kid's not going to go on Kickstarter. Older, like maybe teenagers and young adults, and even people in their 30s like myself and older can find stuff on Kickstarter. But I think to build the young audience is definitely important, and for the future of comic books, because if there's no Marvel DC, there's really no industry. You know what I mean? Like we need Marvel and DC for good or for bad. And you said you discovered at Barnes and Noble. I discovered stuff at the market too. I mean, going to the grocery store with my mom, like she's a little here looking at here. I'm looking at the magazine section. I'm like, oh, I've never seen that character before. Oh, I've never seen that comic. So I do think that is an important aspect that comic books in general have been missing, because it's not going to take away from the direct market. It's going to lead kids to the direct market. It's going to lead them to discovering other stuff. And I think that there has to be some sort of way. You're saying it's a $5 book. I agree. Make a cheap entry point. The Walmart books, no, I'm not about that. I think that it needs to be everywhere to entice kids everywhere to pick stuff up, because young kids are not reading comic books like they were when we were kids. It's just not. I don't think it's the same. And I think we have to cultivate a young audience to enable them to grow into reading other stuff as well.
No, I agree, man. It's really about the kids, and it's like you get them early, and they'll stick around,
And then they're hooked.
and
Yeah,
then they're us. That's it.
yeah. I mean, I hate to say it, but it's like a drug dealer when they're you give them one taste of it and then they're hooked. But it's kind of what comic books are. I don't know how else to say it, because it is. It's like an addiction, kind of. But it's not a bad addiction. I mean, that's how I learned to read. I'm sure that's how countless, thousands of kids learn to read, is through comic books. And I think now more than ever, too, like with the YA, and so you got Scholastic, you got Penguin Random House, you have people like Dave Pilkey, Brandon Telgemeier. So like they are cultivating young readers. But I think that Marvel and DC needs to get in on that ground floor as well. And I think that markets, targets, drugstore, all that stuff. I think that they have to maybe develop a product that's a little bit cheaper and for that market that could lead kids into reading comic books. That's what I think. I do think Kickstarter, like you said, but I think that also there has to be everywhere, man. Like why pigeonhole yourself into one thing? Like be everywhere.
I agree, and I think there's a way to do that, and I want to figure out what that way is. I'm really
So do
passionate
I.
of your passion. It's like I think you're right that it's like DC is doing some really cool stuff with their YA stuff.
Yes.
Batgirl, Beast Boy, and so many more characters are getting like the YA treatment, and it's really awesome to see. And I'm really excited to check out more that they've done.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I mean, like, I'm super like, I just want everybody to be reading comic books. So, and not like, oh, I don't want it to like take away from like, I'm not saying cater to everybody, but like, comic books are such an amazing art form, and I think that they serve a purpose in that in the entertainment industry. You know what I mean? Like, it shouldn't just be about um, creating content to make a film to make $1 billion. Like, take that $1 billion film and develop the audience from there, and you could put that right back into comic books. You know what I mean? Like, it shouldn't be that hard. Is my point. You know, I don't want to see the direct market ever go. And if new readers aren't cultivated, we will not have a direct market eventually. Because I mean, you're just having older readers. Eventually, you know, we will
They
go.
die out.
I
Yeah.
don't know how else to say it, but you know what I mean. Like, I don't know. I feel like I'm in circles.
No, you're right on, and I think it's always about figuring out what's the way to get people excited about new books, and I think
Yeah.
that's a new adventure and a new challenge that we're figuring out as we go.
Yeah, dude, I agree. And before we get out of here, if you want to give any last words on getting it together, and then also tell us where we can find you, and I'll throw those links down below as well.
Yeah, if you guys want, with the pandemic and everything going on, I really recommend checking out the Signature series from Collector's Paradise. It's a great way to get all 4 issues for a really affordable price, and you get both Sina and I on the book. And you can find me online at Omar Spahi on Twitter, or through any of the various Instagrams and so forth. So check me out, Ospahi or Omar Spahi on social media.
Awesome, dude. And once again, thank you for taking some time today to chat with me about the book. And let's do this again sometime, man.
Absolutely. Pleasure tagging with you.